This is the Hype Squad with Charli McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. I'm Charli McConnell, your host. Maybe I do say it. Today, I'm really excited because we have Jasmine for the first time on the podcast. And Jasmine is my new marketing HBIC. That is her legit title. Now we're going with it. And Jasmine just started this week, and we're so excited to have you. This has been a great first week, and we're not even done. It's only like Thursday. Is it Thursday? Yeah, it is Thursday.
It's Thursday.
And we were having a conversation just a couple of nights ago about how hard it was to find a job right out of college. And then we were going through the experience of me interviewing you and then getting to hear the background of how it felt for you. And we both agreed this will be a great conversation to have on the podcast. So
For sure.
that's what we're going to talk about today is interviewing, getting jobs straight out of college. Jasmine, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're
I'm
here.
excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So let's just dive in. So I
Okay.
think that's the easiest place to go. So tell me a little bit about where you are out of college before you started working for me.
Mhm.
Give me a little background.
So I graduated May 5th at 5 p.m. So very, very, very fresh college graduate. Um, Graduated, had my grad party, everything was super great, super fun. And then I think like a week after that, I realized that I did not have a job and that I needed a job. So I went through the process of like, I already had a LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I went through the process of like setting up my LinkedIn, doing all that different stuff. And honestly, in college, I was like, oh, I didn't worry about applying for a job my last semester, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 2 marketing internships and I had another marketing job before that. I've worked in finance before. So I honestly never thought that I would have issues finding a job. Um, and then I think I applied to jobs for like 2 weeks straight. And then all of a sudden it was like a month. And then I just kept applying and it was just going nowhere. It was like I would get up and like I totally got off of TikTok and basically all of my social media time got replaced with time on LinkedIn. The only thing I would do was do free marketing certification courses on like HubSpot, SEMrush, stuff like that because I was like maybe it's me, maybe it's my skills. I went to the career center. I had like 3 people look over my resume. I was doing cover letter reviews. I was doing so much and I just wasn't going anywhere.
Mm.
So I just happened to stumble on your job posting on LinkedIn, and now here we are.
Happily ever after.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really landed for me when you and I were talking about it was you
Hmm.
were not prepared for that to be what
No,
happened for
not
you
at
right out of
all.
school. So let's
Hmm.
talk about that, and we won't bash any schools or anything because I don't know if it's the case for everybody, but
Hmm.
were you totally caught off guard that that was what happened right out of school?
Oh, 100%. I think so. In college, there's a very set format. It's like your junior year, you're supposed to get an internship, or like summer before your junior year, maybe summer before your senior year. I had had jobs before that. I had worked in sales for 3 months, and then I had worked in finance and like payroll for like a full year and a half. I did some administrative assistant stuff, and then I did a marketing internship the fall of my senior year and I had done a marketing internship. I had started it in the summer and then finished it up in the spring of my senior year too.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for the federal government. When you work for the federal government, you get a thing called a DHA certificate. It's basically direct hire. It's a bunch of bougie stuff that sounds like it would get you a job very easily. So I was like, oh, okay. Like I can go, I can party, I can do whatever. My last semester had the time of my life, went out, spent time with my sorority sisters, and then I got my degree, walked the stage in the cutest pair of heels I've like ever worn. I had such a cute little grad party. Everything was pink, everything was gold. My mom had these custom M&Ms. A week later, I was like crying in my room because I did not have a job. I didn't have a source of income. And it was like I was looking at my finances, which I had never done before because I was either in school or had a job. And then I was like, okay, if I don't get a job, I'm going to have to live off of my graduation money or I'm going to have to call my parents. And then it was like, okay, like maybe that can sustain me for like a month. And then I moved out of my apartment.
Mm.
And then it was like all of this stuff that was like constant for me in college just kind of left. And it was like I still didn't have a job. So it was like, in May, it's like, okay, whatever.
Mhm.
Graduated a week ago. I don't need to look for a job. And then it's June. And then it's July. So
Mhm.
it was like it started as something where I was like, okay, like maybe I'll be fine because I was like, whatever, like nobody has a job. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't have a job. I'm an adult. I have bills. Like I don't live in a college apartment anymore. It was just like the craziest experience ever, honestly.
It reminds me a lot. Well, obviously, it's a big transition, but it reminds me a lot of like coming out of high school and going into college. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so excited for this college experience. And then I get there,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you live on campus, and it's like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
this is a lot. This is a
Mm-hmm.
lot to navigate. And then you figure it out. And then as soon as you figure it out and you start having fun, then they throw you into the real world.
For sure.
Um, yeah, it's a big heavy moment, and I can't even
Mm-hmm.
imagine how that probably affected like your mental health. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
What was like, what do you think was the hardest part of it? Were you getting rejected a lot? Were you just not sure why no one was calling you? What was the status of that?
So the thing is, like, it was like 10 different things. So it's like I majored in marketing, minored in information systems management. When I decided to do that, it was because I told myself general marketing is not going to cut it. Marketing has just blown up over the years. I was like, it's not enough just to be in marketing. But then it was like, I have this tech background. Everybody loves tech, everybody loves IT. I've had internships before. Like I said, I've gone above and beyond what they asked me to do. I have internships. I was super involved. I had a social media chair position. Like I did beyond what they asked me to do. And then it was like I would apply, get rejected. Whether it was entry level, whether it was something that was like even like intermediate level, because technically I've had like 2 years of work experience. I've had internships before. It was stuff that like I would apply to stuff where the pay was awful just because I was like, okay, maybe I'll do it. I applied
Mm-hmm.
to sales jobs and I worked in sales before. I said I would never do it again, but I applied to it just to get a job. And it was like, you apply to it. I had like 5 people review my resume. And then it's like I applied to a job. I get denied 2 days later.
Mm.
And of course, all of the rejection emails are very general. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go in a different direction. No one gives you any feedback. No one tells you what's wrong. You're like, well, it's normal. But it's like nobody told me that it was normal. No one told me before I got my degree and my parents paid all this money and I did all this stuff and like stressed myself out that this was going to be my experience. I don't think anyone really preps you for that.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And side note, Rachel's in the room with us, but you can't hear her because she doesn't have a mic. So if you see us looking off camera
Yeah.
or asking the void a question, Rachel's over here because I feel like it. I really wanted all three of us to have a conversation, but I don't have three microphones, so we're making the best of it. Because Rachel is a couple of years older than you in a
Mm-hmm.
different season, but in a very similar circumstance where she's also looking for another job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard and it messes with your
Extremely.
head. And I would ask Rachel, but she doesn't have a microphone. So I'm going to ask you, like,
Mm-hmm.
what did that do to your confidence and your self-esteem
Mm-hmm.
overall, but like just your like mental health? What were you feeling?
I definitely think that it took a toll on it. Like, I graduated cum laude. I like had all the cords on me. I like walked across the stage. All my family was there.
HBIC, yep.
Yeah, definitely like super involved. Like, I was volunteering, I was doing all this internship stuff, but I was also going out. I was doing really well in my classes. And like, I think college provides you with a structure and a balance that I think a lot of people take for granted. I would get up every day, I would have my routine, I would go head to toe in pink. And like I would go tackle my day and still get A's. I would get out of school, change, get the cutest, put on the tiniest skirt I had, go have the time of my life. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now I'm in the house, right? I'm not going out because either my friends are working, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily full time jobs, but they're working or they moved or they do have internships. Some of my younger sorority sisters. And now it's like I'm in the house. I'm not going out. I'm not going to class. And then what I'm putting all of my effort into is not working.
Mm,
So it was just like the worst ever, not only from like a self confidence standpoint, but also it's like all of my social stuff is gone now. I'm not interacting with anyone throughout the day. I'm just sitting here. The only social interaction I have is these people who are rejecting me, and they're not even giving me like a valid reason why. So it was definitely rough.
Wow. Yeah. You said the pink thing, and I'm sitting here looking at you in all black. I'm like, what? Your cup's pink. I'm like, I haven't seen this whole pink outfit yet. I think so. You graduated and then you started applying for jobs. Is there a
Hmm.
reason why you didn't start applying for jobs before you graduated? Was that not recommended?
I applied to a couple of internships. I
Okay.
didn't, so originally, actually, I don't even think either of you know this. My plan was to go get my MBA.
Mm-hmm.
I did not plan on getting a full-time job. And I think that's actually something important to mention that your post-grad plans can change immediately. So I applied to the MBA program at my school. I won't say what school
That's fine.
because they rejected me, so I'm not gonna give them a shout out.
I'm with you.
I applied to the MBA program. You have to take the GMAT or the GRE to get
Yep.
into the MBA program. So originally, I had a plan. I was gonna graduate, go straight to get my MBA. Wouldn't worry about getting a job until after the school offered a full-time program. I love the city that we live in, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is gonna be great. I apply. Didn't do as well as I wanted to on the test, but I had a great GPA, had a great resume, knew people in the program currently, and they were like, you'll be fine. Like, you're fine. They rejected me within a week, didn't even give me an interview. Like, I didn't even get to the second round. So it was like, that was in April.
Mm.
So it's like what I kind of, and I messed up, and I can say that I kind of put all my eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was never a part of my plan to work.
Mm.
And I'm on the younger side. I'll be 22 in a couple of weeks. So 22 in August. Most people are 22 already when they go into their senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really hard for me just because I was starting to notice like where I was younger, some of the gaps and stuff like that. And because my plan got messed up, it was like I already feel like I'm behind the curve. And then now my plan has totally shifted and I'm having to adapt to something that I didn't even plan on doing to begin with. So it was like I had applied to some internships really just to keep me busy, have some money to get my nails and my lashes done.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never something that was critical for me. And it was never something where I was like, oh, I'm going to be sitting at home all week or all month or all 2 months or all three
Mm-hmm.
months. And now this is like exactly what I need to do. So that was why I wasn't applying for jobs, was because in my mind, I was going to grad school 100%. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's a great life lesson.
Mm-hmm.
That all like eggs in one basket type of thing. And I did that. So I still do that a lot.
For sure.
Um, I think that it's, I don't know. I think it's a true testament. Hold on. I want to go back before I go into this.
Mhm.
Like, so what was your plan with the MBA?
I was going to get my MBA, and in marketing, the salary difference between
Okay.
someone with an MBA and without is like 100 grand or something
Okay.
crazy. Gonna get my MBA, probably move to a major marketing city like Dallas or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I was gonna use all that business knowledge, get a great job, become a brand manager. Like it was never my plan to work an entry level position really, because for a lot of job postings, if you have the experience post grad in terms of school, they'll waive the job requirement and the job qualification things
Hmm.
because they're like, oh, you've been in school.
Yeah.
So it's like if it's like 3 to 5 years of experience, they'll waive that for anything higher than a college degree. So that was my plan, was like, well, I'll just supplement it with school. I like school enough. That was the way that I felt. And honestly, I was trying to give myself time to grow up. I was
Mm-hmm.
always really close with my parents and I didn't feel like I was ready to be an adult. And to be honest with you, I was like, there is no way I can go and get a job and wake up every day and
Mm-hmm.
answer to a boss in like a really serious
Yeah.
atmosphere where I know that this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. I'm going to school. And that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't what happened. So,
Okay, I'm glad that you gave that answer because that was the reason why I asked it. Is I
mm-hmm,
feel like some people extend their education as a way to
mm-hmm.
prolong the inevitable of
Oh, for
like,
sure.
I'm just going to keep going to school because
Mm-hmm,
that feels good. And I'm scared to go out and do this thing. So
mm-hmm.
I'm going to, it's almost like a protection mechanism too.
Definitely.
Like I did it.
Mm-hmm,
I almost just did it 3 months ago when I
mm-hmm,
wanted, not 3 months ago, it's been longer than that. But I was going to go back and get to be a licensed therapist because I'm like, I need that to be credible, right? Like I
mm-hmm.
need that, and it's going to take me 3 years, and that's I love school. I'm going to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And my husband, Colby, called me out and he said, "What are you doing? Like, you don't need to have that. You're just pushing, basically kicking the rock down the road to deal with it later."
Essentially.
When the thing I was really scared of was this, right? Doing this on my own and putting myself out there. And I think that's probably relatable in
Oh,
this moment.
100%.
Yeah, I so wish you had a microphone, Rachel.
I
Because I think
know.
too, Rachel and I have talked about this over the years of her going and getting like a corporate job or just a
Mhm.
job that's very different than what she does here. And it's scary. It
It
is. And
is.
it's like you don't know what to expect. Like even coming to work for me, you had no idea what to
Mhm.
expect. You're still like in the very beginning of it.
Definitely.
And it's the fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
It's really scary.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
couple that with your friend dynamics are changing,
Mhm.
financial things are changing, relationships
Mhm.
with your parents are changing, like
Yeah.
so much change at one time.
I think the amount of change also, I'll just be really blunt. I am not someone who does well with change.
It's
I
fair.
like what I like. I'm very comfortable. I eat the same things. I'm
Hmm.
very organized. And when I got into my sorority, which I've been very open, I got into it like in the fall. So I got to sorority life kind of late.
Yeah.
Most girls get into it like their freshman, their sophomore year. Took me a little bit longer. That's
Hmm.
fine. I got really comfortable with my sorority sisters.
Mm.
We range from like sophomore to senior. So it's like some of us are 19, some of us are 20, some 21, 22. And I think that was something else was like we were all at different places in life. I had one sister who was like me, getting ready to graduate, possibly moving. I had some sisters who were just now looking for internships and everything like that. Everyone's in different places financially. So it's like some sisters were still relying on their parents and they didn't have to worry about anything like that. And I think that something that people don't talk about is like it's very easy to get sucked into that.
Hmm.
So it's like, well, she's not worrying about it, so why do I have to worry about it? But I think that no one talks about like when you're sitting there by yourself and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like now I've kind of backed myself into a corner, you know?" And I definitely think that there's a self-confidence aspect to it because kind of like what you just said, I never thought that I would be a marketing specialist or a marketing guru or HBIC or anything because I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think that I, fresh out of college, could ever work in a marketing role and feel like I was doing my job. I was doing a good job. Someone wanted to hire me, especially after being rejected so many times.
I was about to say, if you even had an inclination of that feeling
Mm-hmm.
and then to be rejected so many times, it's
Yeah, for
like you're
sure.
just wallowing in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
you and I, with Rachel, and outside of Rachel being in the room, about just like the self-deprecating things that we say to ourselves, because
Yeah.
both of y'all have said essentially the same things about
Mm-hmm.
insecurities about being around each other, because
For
neither
sure.
one of you knew each other. You didn't meet
Mm-hmm.
her when you were interviewing, and so you both come into it somewhat, and this I think this would be fair to say, intimidated by not
Mm-hmm.
knowing who the other person is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come in and you like mirror this self-deprecating conversation, which is so totally normal. Women do it all the
Mm-hmm.
time. It drives me crazy. I do it all the time. I just did it earlier. I don't know what I
Mm-hmm.
said, but I said something. Y'all were both like, "Don't say that." I'm like, "See, everybody does it."
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, I said something. Nobody listens to the podcast. That's what I said. Right. But
Oh.
everybody does that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
such a sad thing that we do to ourselves. But that was something that I saw you guys relate to, whether you even realized you were doing it in the first place. And one thing I've said to you and I've said to Rachel, like, you guys don't have the same job. Like, you're not in
Mm-hmm.
competition with each other whatsoever. Like, the reason Rachel's leaving is not why you're here, like, none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to set it to where there wasn't any competition between the two of you because I really wanted you guys to like hang out and be cool. And you are, which is great. But you come in not knowing what to anticipate for her, and you
Mm-hmm.
could, and vice versa. And I think if you like exponential that number going into a workplace with 20 different people on a
Yeah.
team and meeting in an office. And I do feel like this will be like a sweet transition for you. I hope you stay with me forever. But I also think that like this is such a great way. And I'm sure Rachel would probably attest to that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
getting your feet in with
Oh,
doing
for
the
sure.
work with enough
Yeah.
room to like mess up and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very happy that you're here. I hate that you had to go through all of that, but I feel like it's
Mm-hmm.
something that nobody talks about and nobody in college prepared you for.
Definitely
And
not.
even your mom, like your mom didn't know to prepare you. You're an only child. You're her
Mhm.
first time having a daughter graduate from
Yeah.
college. And so she was very supportive from what I've
Mhm.
heard from you. But like, even the parents don't know how, if you're a parent listening to
No.
this, like, this is a really hard period that nobody talks about.
For sure. And I think it's also something where it's like, in my mom's eyes, like my mom did a podcast with one of her friends, and she is the most like accomplished woman I know. They're like, well, what's your greatest accomplishment? She's like, yeah, I've accomplished a lot of career stuff, and my greatest accomplishment is my daughter, being a mother. It's like when you have a mom who says stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go to apply to a job, my mom is always reaffirming me, you're so smart. I'm so proud of you, you know? My dad, same thing. Everyone who went to my grad party came up to me, gave me a huge hug. They were like, I am so proud of you. You've worked so hard. So it's like you feel all these amazing emotions like, oh my gosh, I did it. I walk across the stage, and then it's like, ew.
Then what?
Like, then what,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, really, if you think about it, the past 16 years of education have all been leading up to one moment, which is graduating from college. And then you do it, and no one ever preps you for the fact that a lot of these people don't care that you graduated from college because everybody else graduated from college. Going to college is pretty much the standard these days. And it's like, it's not just like I'm having this transition in terms of my life. I'm having this transition in terms of myself, in terms of 10 other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like on top of that, I don't have a job. And I think that that just kind of exasperates everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I'm not going out and I don't have a job. So I think sometimes that's when it's really easy to get down on yourself. And like you said, just no one ever speaks about it. And I didn't know it was normal at all.
Well, I remember watching you and Rachel talk about it like the first day, and y'all just
Mm-hmm.
immediately connected on how hard it was to find a job and how awful it was
Definitely.
applying. And it's like both of you thought you were isolated in that moment. You both,
Mm-hmm.
to some degree, thought it was just you. It's only happening to me. And so, one of the reasons why I thought this would be a great conversation, I do, and we talked about this briefly before, like your 20s suck.
They do.
And you get out of college, and it's like, who the hell am I?
Mm-hmm.
What do I want with my life? I had to have all of this direction and idea for my future because everyone's asking me every turn I make, right?
Well, and that was another thing is like at my graduation party, all of these people are like, we love you. We're so proud of you. What's next?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's next for myself. I don't even know what I'm going to eat for breakfast tomorrow. You're putting so much pressure on me. And it's like simultaneously, I'm dealing with all of these emotions of not getting into the MBA program. I don't have a backup plan right now. I'm still trying to process things myself. Everything around me is changing. And I think to an extent, it kind of feels like you're spinning out of control. And I think that as humans, that's really normal. It's like you like to control one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, if this isn't working out, at least I have this. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like that. It was like, okay, well, this isn't working out and nothing else is working out. And then also for me, all of my friends had summer jobs. I did not
Mm-hmm.
have a summer job, and I wasn't really willing to take a summer job where I was like doing something that wasn't related to my field at all. So it was like I would just sit at home all day
Questioning all your
questioning
decisions.
what's
Yeah.
wrong with me. Should I have tried harder? You know, kind of wishing I could go back to my senior year. And even like when I walked into my first interview with you, I had to pray before I got out of the car that it would go well because that was the only interview I got. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that that was a normal experience. And I was like, you know, I couldn't tell myself that there would be more interviews, there would be more
Mm-hmm.
opportunities. So I think that's the part that people just don't talk about.
I want to dig into the interview, but I also want to say this because I thought about this a second ago. You said something uh, this week. You were like, "I feel like I can feel my frontal lobe closing." Like, I thought
And
it
I
was,
stand by
I
that.
thought
Yeah,
it was
for
hilarious, but
sure.
it's also a good reminder that like your brain is not even fully formed when you're supposed to
No.
be making all these decisions
Mhm.
about your future. And I remember even when I was in high school, which is like 20 years ago this year, which anyway, um, it was like, how am I supposed to know my 11th grade of high school year what I want to go to college for? I don't. And I told you, like, my first degree was communications and psychology. It was the broadest thing I could
Mhm.
pick and have some sort of direction because I had no idea. And then that bit me in the ass because then it's
Mhm.
like, it's too broad. What are you going to do with it? You have to
Yeah.
like figure out what you want to do from there. So, but I want to talk about the interview
Okay.
because when you and I went to dinner the other night and you're giving me your replay of the interview, it
Mhm.
was in like so much contrast to the way I saw you. So
Mhm.
I want to hear from your point of view. So I call you in for an interview. I can only
Mhm.
imagine how weird it is to come to somebody's house.
Yeah, so you emailed me about an interview, and when you emailed me back immediately, to be honest with you, I thought it was a rejection because that was what I was used to. I was like, dang, another one. And then you're like, no, like come in for an interview. I was like, yes. Okay, finally. And then I looked up the address before, of course. Everyone is asking me because I told my parents, like, look, I finally got an interview. And they're like, oh, thank God, finally, you
Yeah.
know? So I sit here. It's like 90 degrees outside. I
Good
put on
hot.
slacks and a button up.
Yeah.
It is
So
hot.
hot.
And I'm just kind of, I don't know what I'm doing. It's hot outside.
You had pulled like way over to the
Yeah.
side, and I went out the front door and I was like, is that you coming
Hmm.
down
And
here?
I was like, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know if you were going to grill me. I didn't know if you were going to be super nice. Like, and then it was also like, I was like, oh, I'm rusty. I haven't interviewed in a while because I've been so used to getting rejected. I don't even know how I'm going to show up.
Uh huh.
And then it was like my parents were putting all this pressure on me. I was putting all this pressure on myself. I was super duper nervous. It was a mess.
I think you said you like blacked out, maybe in that one or the one with Colby. We'll get to that in a minute.
Honestly, both.
But I think you were saying to me like how nervous you were. I can't remember like specifics, but I think that was the basic like obviously you're nervous. It's an
Mm-hmm.
interview, of course you're nervous. But I said to you, I didn't pick up on any of that. And I think it's something I want to highlight because I also gave you the example that just in the experience of the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are moments in recording an interview, talking to other women that I have this internal moment of, oh shit, I'm nervous.
Mm-hmm.
My voice is shaking. I can feel it. And it's a weird experience to be able to go back and listen and know exactly when that moment was and listen to my voice. And when I realized my voice, you could not hear
Yeah,
it.
you can't tell.
And I thought you could. I just
Mm-hmm.
assumed to like the person on the other side of me can they can hear it, they
Mm-hmm.
can see it, they know I'm crumbling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, "Oh shit, you can't tell." Like,
Mm-hmm.
"Wow, that's cool." And then for me to say to you, I couldn't tell you were nervous at all. Like you came off very confident,
Mm-hmm.
very articulate, and you gave ideas and I asked questions that you did
Mm-hmm.
not falter on, which I was super impressed by. And when I told you that, you were
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm sorry, what? I is this the same room? Like you didn't remember it that way.
When I walked out, I was like, I have no idea what I just told her. And I was almost scared because, of course, I was like trying to come off as confident. I didn't want you to think, oh, she's terrified. And then I was like, I don't even know what I just told her. I don't know if I told her something that I don't know anything about. I don't want her to think that I'm trying to sit here and advertise myself as someone who's been in marketing for 25 years.
Yeah.
I graduated college 2 months ago. I don't even know myself.
Mhm.
Like, I don't even feel like an adult. I still feel like I'm 16 years old and now I'm interviewing for jobs. It was the weirdest thing ever. But I definitely remember blacking out and being like, oh my gosh, she probably hated me. And then you're like, yeah, no, I'm gonna send you a follow-up email. I was like, oh, I'm not getting a follow-up email. And then you sent me a follow-up email. I was like, oh my gosh, like she followed up, like so fun. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that means I have to interview again. And this with two people. So it was just like, it was so much. I was so nervous. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah. Well, so the second interview, I mean, hell, I was nervous too. So a backstory: the second interview, you're good, was with Colby.
Mm-hmm.
Colby has a huge marketing background. He
Mm-hmm.
runs the marketing department of his company. Blah blah blah. So Colby had asked when I first put this position out there, you have the first interview, make sure you guys like your energies match and it's
Mm-hmm.
somebody you would want to work with. And then let me come in and ask marketing specific questions because I don't know shit about marketing, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I need an HBIC, right? So he knew more specific questions to ask. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
Rachel was like, You're they're gonna have an interview with Colby because Colby's intimidating. He is. And
Mm-hmm.
he's intimidating to me too, right? Like he's very business, he's very black and white
Mm-hmm.
in the workplace and it can be nerve wracking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I already knew that going in that would be nerve wracking. But I also, and you don't even know Colby, right? So you don't even
No,
know to
yeah.
be nervous around him, but it's just another person
Mm-hmm.
we met at his office in his conference room.
Yeah.
So another place that you're not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very sympathetic to that. Like I knew going
Mm-hmm.
in. But on top of that, I asked you to come in with marketing pitches. So
Did.
ideas. I wanted all of the people I had come in for second interviews, I had them come in with idea. That was my
Mhm.
homework, if you will, because I really wanted to see, okay, you've got a week or 2 weeks in between us
Mhm.
meeting. What are some ideas you would come up with? All
Mhm.
of this kind of stuff. So before I go into how I perceived that interview,
Mhm.
what did that feel like, coming up with ideas and all of that?
So coming up with ideas, it was a little bit like I wouldn't call it difficult because we had done something really similar in one of my classes. I think I was just putting a lot of pressure on myself because I was like, I don't know how many ideas I should give you. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how much of an explanation you're going to want. And also, it required a ton of research on my end because it was like I had maybe an hour-long conversation with you in the first interview. And then you're like, okay, give me what you got. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh, like my mom, I remember I called her and she was like, well, she's trying to see what you would do if you had the job. She
Mm-hmm.
was like, what are you going to do when you have the job? And I remember after I went on LinkedIn because we connected on LinkedIn and I tried to see kind of who else you connected with. And I was like, oh, I'm out. Like, I was like, I'm out. I was like, I'm probably on the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Because it was like all these other girls had their own freelance business. One girl sold cuticle oil. I'm like, I don't know how to sell anything.
I don't even know who I'm connected
I,
to.
I was just looking and I was like, oh my gosh, no. And my mom had to tell me, she's like, you haven't been in the room yet. She was like, she's like, you got your foot in the door. She's like, what are you gonna do? You know, she's very like self-motivating. I'm like, you're 50. I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't feel confident in myself. I was like, I've never written a marketing pitch before. So I got on Canva. I did my HBIC duties and tried my
Uh-huh.
best. I told you at dinner the other night, I changed the theme last minute because it was bubblegum pink with white all over it. And then I looked at your website. I was like, oh my gosh, nothing on her website, bubblegum pink. So I tried to do it as close to your branding as possible, practice it 20 times. And then even the morning of I was practicing it, I was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just saying words and they're going to look at me and be like, do you even know what you're saying? And especially because you told me in the first interview, you're like, yeah, no, like my husband's been in marketing for 10 years. And I was like, oh no, in the first interview, I was like, well, she likes me, you know, like
Yeah.
if you're not a marketing person, I can go in here and say
Yeah.
social media strategy and SEO and use all these great words. And then you're like, well, my husband has been marketing for 10 years. And I was like, he is going to rip me a new one and he is not going to like me. And I was like, you know what? All I can do is pray. I got myself a coffee and some egg whites. And I was like, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do my best. And then after, I didn't really remember what I said. I was like, I think I did well. Like, I don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, okay. I went home, I took a nap, and I was like, I'm not gonna focus on it because I was that nervous
Yeah.
and I was that like, I have no idea what happened and I don't know what I did. And like it wasn't something where I didn't put my best foot forward. I prepped for that interview for like 2 weeks. I practiced my pitch every day and I didn't think that going into it came off like that at all. So it's just crazy to hear like the differences in perspectives.
So my face is hurting from laughing so hard at that tell because I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to be like, it's okay. Oh my, if I'd have known you were suffering like that, it would have killed me. But I get it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
get it. And your mom's right. That was my whole idea behind giving the homework. And it's very true to like just me as a coach too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm always giving homework. Actually, I was just on a call earlier that she was like, you need to rebrand that phrase because that triggers a lot for me. I'm like, okay, I need to come up with a new word. Anyway, so that's exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
see there's plenty of stuff out there, social media and the podcast that you could have seen what I've already done and you could
Mm-hmm.
come and you could pitch me ideas. And I really just wanted to see how creative you are. Like, what are you going to do
Mm-hmm.
with just that little bit? Because I didn't give you any parameters.
No.
I said, just come with some ideas to
And
pitch.
that was another thing. My mom was like, "Well, you need to email her and see does she want a presentation? Does she want notes? Does she want a paper?" And I was like, "Mom, I think that's the part of it. She wants to see what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she wants to hold my hand." And that was another thing. I was like, "Oh, I'm an adult. I'm grown.
Mm-hmm.
I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps and do what do they call that? Like your power pose that you do
Yeah,
for
your
interviews.
power pose, like
Like do my power pose and
Superman's power
it's
pose.
something
Yeah,
more
something like
like
that. Shoulders
self-confidence,
back.
but
Yeah.
my mom basically told me to email you with 20 questions. I was like, I'm not gonna bother this lady with 20 questions. That's not happening. I was like, I'm gonna do my
I
best.
appreciate that you did not do that.
I was like, I'm not gonna do
So the idea behind it, and really, because you're going to cater to what you would want in return,
Mhm.
right? You're going to present the way you feel like seems professional and appropriate and what you would anticipate getting in return. And so it's like I had one girl that came in with absolutely nothing, like nothing in her hand. She came in with her keys and her cell phone, and then she just gave me, I'll do some reels or something. It was very, very vague. And I remember thinking, like, oh, that told me everything I need to know. Nothing
Yeah.
against her as a person, but
Mhm.
that prompt with no parameters,
Mhm.
she just kept it very vague. Whereas you had it, and I don't know what she was on the back end. I don't know if she was
Yeah.
nervous about it or anything like
Mhm.
that. I'm sure she was, but you took it and it says so much about your level of professionalism
Mhm.
that I am going to make sure this is perfect, right? Without
Mhm.
any parameters. So, and I get where your mom's coming from because she was in probably protection mode. Like,
Yeah,
don't
for sure.
fail, ask for
Mhm.
clarification and stuff like that. But that's also how I am as like a business owner and a boss. Is I'm not
Yeah.
going to micromanage you.
Well, that was what I told her. I was like, Mom, she emphasized I'm not hand holding and I'm not micromanaging in the
Mm-hmm.
first interview. I want her to know that I listen to her and I'm taking that forward. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want her to think, oh, I talked to you and you didn't hear a thing that I said. And now you're basically trying to kiss my butt to try to see if you can get the job. I didn't want you to think that.
I had some butt kissers. I did. I did have some butt kissers. One of the first comments I said to Rachel after our first and maybe the second, I
Mm-hmm.
said my biggest takeaways from you were you were guarded. I could tell that you were guarded,
Mm-hmm.
but you did not kiss my ass.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it a lot. I liked the fact that you were not overzealous or overexcited about the fact that I was a coach or had a
Mm-hmm.
podcast. None of that was like super flashy for you. And
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated that. Like that
Yeah.
was something that really drew me to you in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Um, but I will tell you on my end of that second interview, and on a side note, the reason I'm going so much into the details behind this is I feel like most people don't get a bird's eye view of what it's like to hear from both perspectives, the
Yeah.
interviewer and the interviewee. And even though like the context of the interview and the homework and all that stuff is not going to apply to everybody, I do feel like
Mm-hmm.
this is a useful conversation to realize that like so much of that was in your head,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
So much of
Mm-hmm.
that was in your head. And I even told Jasmine before, I was like, I was nervous to interview you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was not just you. I was not coming in here super comfortable and confident.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own insecurities, right?
Yeah.
But in that second interview, and I even like positioned us in a way to where you would not feel on like
Mm-hmm.
not on display, but like I didn't want you to be at the head and us in front. So I
Yeah.
purposely positioned us in a way that hopefully was a little bit more comfortable. And then Colby's in there and you're having to meet him
Mhm.
as well as him ask you questions.
Mhm.
And you came in and you had PowerPoint presentations printed.
I
And first
did.
off, I
I did.
was so excited because that is a huge thing for me. It's just
Mhm.
it's my love language, like paper and office supplies and
Mhm.
having something hard in front of me. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it would have been equally as impressive if you would have set up and have a presentation deck, but
Mhm.
having something in my hands that I could take home with me
Mhm.
was like a immediate yes, right?
Mhm.
The colors, the first thing I said to you is I said, "Oh my God, these are in my brand colors." And
Mhm.
then you tell me the other night, I
Yeah.
did that the morning of, and I was freaking out about
I
changing the
was freaking
color.
out because I was like, so my mind was like, okay, I want to show her me. And then I was sitting there, I was reading it. I was on the phone with my mom actually, and I went silent and I was like, this is not about me. This is about her. Of course, I'm trying to see if I like her as well. But I was like, I already like her. I want her to like me. I want her to see what I can do for her brand. I want her to see if you take a chance on me and give me this job as a 2-month post college graduate who has no idea what they're doing,
Mhm.
but will give you the effort and has experience, here's what I can do for you.
Mhm.
So I was just like, okay, I'm going to try my best.
I'll tell you from my perspective, and not everyone's going to be like this, right? But had the only way you were not getting that job after
Mm-hmm.
handing me a beautifully curated presentation paperwork was if it totally flopped somewhere or like something just totally did not add up. From the
Mm-hmm.
moment I had that paperwork in my hand, I was like sold. Like I'm not even listening to anything else she says because I'm done for.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just tells me so much about how much work you put into what you present and that you want to be
Mm-hmm.
proud of it. And so it
Yeah.
spoke volumes to me. But then we get into the presentation and your ideas were legit. I came home and I showed Rachel, and I'm like, oh my God, Rachel, these were all great ideas. You broke it up
Mhm.
in segments. And I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but it was just, it spoke volumes about the seriousness that you took in
Mhm.
creating this. You didn't just throw a bunch of shit on a Canva template and fill
Mhm.
up in a bunch of blurbs. Like you really put effort into it.
Mhm.
And I could tell. And Colby peppered you with questions and you never even
He
hesitated.
did. He
I was
like
so impressed.
So I'm sitting in the room. He has his little pen and his little notebook. And I'm like, oh, he's gonna grill me so bad. And I remember, I think, so I get my elevator pitch. The first thing out of his mouth is like, so your last job, that doesn't sound interesting. What did you learn from that? I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say to him. Like, but I was like, okay, take a deep breath. It's fine. I don't even remember what I told him. I know I told him the truth, of
Yeah.
course, but I think I told him something about like me growing and evolving. But it was something like none of his questions, and I was actually talking to Rachel about this other day. He did not follow a traditional interview format. If you get on any of the interview things and they're like,
He's well known
what are,
for that.
what are your strengths and your weaknesses? That's what I thought he was going to ask me. What do you see yourself bringing to the team? That was not, he asked me for my elevator pitch, and then everything from that point on was individualized to me, and he was taking notes on everything that I said.
So he is very well known for his interview tactics, and
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't want to know anything about you going into it. So he didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to see your resume. I wasn't even allowed to like, not allowed, that sounds icky, but he didn't even want me like saying who was my favorite going in or what I was
Mm-hmm.
excited. He was like, don't tell me anything. Talk to Rachel if you want to talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
let me go in completely blind because and he's interviewed all of the people. Like he's very good at this. And also I tell
Mm-hmm.
Rachel all the time, I'm like, you should practice with him because
Mm-hmm.
if you can get through an interview with him, and she's probably already sweating, like thinking about it. If you can get through an interview with him because he
Mm-hmm.
is present, he's not going down a list of questions. He
Yeah.
is what your answer is
Mm-hmm.
decides the next question he asks you.
Oh, for sure.
But I was sitting back watching this and I'm nervous for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not the one being peppered with questions.
Mm-hmm.
But you handled it so well. And there was not hesitation in your answers. You weren't like, I never witnessed you have like a lapse in answering or a lapse
Mm-hmm.
in thought process. I want to say like a brain fart, but basically, I never
Basically.
heard
Mm-hmm.
you do that. You were like, okay, this. Like it just the composure, which to hear from you, you were like, I didn't feel composed. I was so caught off guard.
Mm-hmm.
But on my end, watching you, I was like, wow, this girl is super composed. I
Mm-hmm.
feel confidence. I could tell you were a little less guarded.
Yeah.
Um, so our replays of that are so
Mm-hmm.
different.
I remember I was talking to Rachel about it, like I think my first day. And I told her, I was like, I thought I was gonna go in there, pull out my laptop, throw up all over the table, and they were gonna be like, someone get this girl out of here because she just threw up all over the table. Like, interview over. She's too nervous. She can't handle the pressure. So to hear from your perspective that, like, no, I thought you did such a good job and you were so professional and so composed. I was like, really?
Mhm.
I was so scared.
I think this is another reason why I'm going to talk about this because we're all in our heads
Oh,
about
for
they're going to know
sure.
that I'm pretending or I'm faking it or
Mm-hmm.
I have imposter syndrome or they're never going to believe me or I'm suffering. Almost 100% of the time, you don't portray that.
Yeah.
It feels like you are, which makes you falter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can practice enough, which sounds like you did practice a
Mm-hmm.
ton, you can combat that, but you're always going to have those insecurities inside of
Yeah.
you. And I thought this was a great thing for you to hear feedback from me because it's constructive feedback.
Mhm.
It's not, I'm not going to say constructive criticism because I'm not being like, you could have done this better. Cause honestly, I
Mhm.
don't know, other than being a little less guarded, which I don't know how you do that, that I didn't have any other critiques for
Mhm.
you. But it's just to say, like, you did a good job. Like, take a deep
Mhm.
breath and realize that you can now see this from a different perspective. And it was not
Mhm.
at all what you thought it was.
And I think that's something that I'm really grateful for because, like, if you and I would have never had this conversation, I don't think I would have known.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, even Like my first day, I told Rachel, I was like, I honestly couldn't sleep because I was so scared to meet y'all. And Rachel was like, well, I couldn't sleep because I was scared for you. I didn't know that. When I first met Rachel, I didn't get that vibe from her at all. I thought she was like, okay, like whatever.
See?
So it's definitely something where, and I think that of course when it's yourself, you tend to look at yourself with a magnifying glass. But
Mhm.
I think that you can get through it. Just go in there, put your best foot forward. And now, granted, preparation is key. I cannot
Mhm.
sit here and say that if I wouldn't have done all that and I would have just thrown something together and all of that different stuff, I would have showed up the same way. But it's definitely something where I was like, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to try my best. And if they don't want me, then that's on them. And I do think that you kind of have to get to that point simply because it's like if you allow it to become something that's like you instead of like being on other people, I think you're just gonna always be upset with yourself. So
Yeah. I think that one of my favorite things to come back to for myself and for people I work with is like if it doesn't scare you, it's not the
mm-hmm.
thing you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're taking a risk on something that's not scary, it's not the risk you're supposed to. Like you should be scared. It means
Yeah.
that you're changing and you're growing, you're doing something out
Mm-hmm.
of your comfort zone, and don't run from that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because so many people are like, I'm just going to keep going to school because I don't
Yeah.
want to interview and I don't want to work and I'm
Mm-hmm.
scared of that, so I'm not going to do it. And your situation started kind of like that, but then it quickly changed to where you got to do it scared.
Mm-hmm.
You do. You have to do it scared, but still do it, right?
100%.
I loved this conversation.
Yeah,
This
no,
was
it's
fun.
so
Okay,
fun.
so Jasmine is going to be on here a lot, right? We're excited to have Jasmine back on here, and I'm not sure if you know how we do this. So we do our hype list.
Okay.
And the reason that it's called the Hype Squad is the Hype List is an assignment that I give clients.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially like a list of achievements and a list of obstacles that you overcame in order to achieve them. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really just your brag list. Like, what's the shit
Okay.
I'm proud of that was really hard to do? How did I
Mm-hmm.
overcome things to do it? So on every episode, I ask whoever's on here talking to me to
Mm-hmm.
give two things off their hype list. So one achievement and one obstacle. You can make it relevant to our conversation today or just totally
Okay.
random, but share with us your hype list.
I'd say my hype list. So like one thing that I'm like really proud of that I overcame, and then one thing that I just achieved that I'm super proud
So
of,
yeah,
or
they
like,
can be related. So it can be
mm-hmm,
I achieved this, and in order to do that, I overcame this, or they can
mm-hmm.
be separate, but something
Okay.
you overcame and something you achieved.
I would say the thing that I'm most proud of is I graduated in 4 years with a minor. Um, moved my entire life across the country. I had a ton of setbacks, especially with my health. And there was like one point where I thought I was going to have to drop out of school
Mm,
because I was like, I don't think I'm healthy enough to keep going. I think I'm too anxious. I think I have too much issues with this, and this. And now, like looking back at it, I graduated in 4 years and I have a job two, three
hmm.
months post grad. So it's like, I would say that's my biggest accomplishment so far because I think that's is something really where you have to reflect on where you're at because the stuff that I didn't think I would be able to do a couple months ago, I'm actively living the life that I was like, oh, I'm never going to get there. And I think that sometimes when you're always trying to like rush to achieve things, it can feel like, oh, like I'm never going to get there. But no, I'm here. I'm doing exactly what 6 months ago, 3 months ago, I was like, oh, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to be that girl. So I'd say that's
You did that
mine.
shit, girl.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
Um, I think the obstacle I would say out of what you just said would be like overcoming the health stuff and thinking you
Mhm.
weren't going to do it. And I love that that's what you shared because that's so relatable.
Yeah.
It's like you're not there until you're there. I shared this thing on Instagram. I need to look it up, but it basically said it's it's not, it takes 10 years, but then it is literally an overnight success because it does
Mhm.
happen overnight, but you don't think about the 10 years you worked to get to that
No.
one night that then you wake up the
Mhm.
next morning and it changes.
Yeah.
It does, but it takes so much effort on the front end and you have
Mhm.
to just keep going. But
Yeah.
I loved this. Thank you
No,
for
it's so
coming and
fun. Thank
talking.
you for having me.
We're gonna have to get a third microphone so next time Rachel can be in
Yes.
and on this conversation. She's like a producer in the back. I love it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for getting hyped with us today and take care of yourselves.